What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the DNF podcast with your girl, Crystal. How are you guys? I know I disappeared for 3 weeks, and you're probably thinking we thought you quit. I promise you I'm still here. And I'm going to give you guys an update on kind of why I haven't posted an episode since Sao Paulo. And we're going to get into the last 3 weeks of Formula One. I believe I mentioned in the Sao Paulo episode that I would actually be going to Las Vegas and I would be going with my mom, who has never attended a Formula One race in her life. So I was really excited. It was our first girls trip. In my head, I had all this content that I wanted to film. I kind of wanted to do like a vlog and show you guys like where I was sitting, where I was staying, what the atmosphere, what the vibes were. But to be honest, one, it was my first time ever going to Las Vegas. My goal throughout that weekend was kind of to make sure that my mom enjoyed herself and that my mom understood like what was happening, what was going on. And I just really wanted to make sure that my mom had a great time. So by doing so, I kind of put everything on, the back burner. And so after Las Vegas that week, if you are from the US and you celebrate this holiday, it was Thanksgiving week, which was also the Qatar Grand Prix week. And it was kind of a little bit hectic in my household because we are the ones who host Thanksgiving. And then also I was really upset about Qatar. So I like wanted to post so bad. Like I wanted to come on here and like vent to you guys and tell you guys what I was feeling. But at the same time, I was like, I think I just need to take a breather. Maybe I'm taking this a little too personal. So that's why I didn't post anything for Qatar, and then Abu Dhabi just happened. And that's kind of what we're gonna recap. So let's get into Las Vegas really quickly. Would I recommend Las Vegas as a track to go to? It depends on what you're like looking for. I think if you're looking for something that's family friendly, if you're looking to take your kids, I wouldn't recommend Las Vegas. One, because it's a night race and obviously kids have bedtimes, but also like Vegas is very much a party scene. And if you are not like a drinker, if you're not a gambler, if you're not really about the vibes, you can have a good time. There's stuff to do. If you're like in the US, I would say Coda is a little bit more family friendly. And I would recommend Coda over Vegas if that's what you're looking for. Now, if you're looking for the glitz, the glamour, the party scene, party vibes, for sure, Vegas is the, race to go to. This time, it was not super super cold. It was pretty chilly if you're not used to like I think it was like 40-50 degree weather. It rained during all free practices and also during qualifying. So that was not fun, but it was also like not fun to sit, but it was great to watch. And then the race itself, I mean, Max's move on Lando on turn one with Lando overly defending, and then, of course, the famous double DSQ for the McLarens. So, I mean, I know that a lot did happen during the race. But as a fan who is just watching, like who is there, the commentators at the Las Vegas track, were not it. They like were not properly giving us information. But they just seemed bored. They didn't seem like they wanted to be there. And it also where I was sitting in the T-Mobile zone by the Sphere. Everyone around me, great, like great people, met lovely, lovely fans, but there was really hardly any action where I was sitting because it was kind of like because the T-Mobile area is really big. Okay, so where I was sitting, honestly, what we were seeing was kind of like the build up to make a move. So I was sitting, like I said, in the T-Mobile grandstand, by the Sphere. I was in section SG 1104, row 8, seat 13. Um, there wasn't any action, like anything like we would see a little bit more like we had a screen so we could see what was happening on the screen, but the commentators never built Like they didn't create that sense of like urgency or like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. Like even when like Charles and Oscar were fighting, for position and including Ollie, also how close, Oscar was getting to Kimmy. There was never any buildup. It never felt like, oh my gosh, something exciting is happening on track, which sucked because like a lot of us who were sitting there were like, wow, there's so much action happening, but we're not getting the vibe or the feel for it. So if I were to do like Vegas again, I wouldn't do the T-Mobile grandstand, maybe specifically where I was sitting. I think maybe closer to where turn one or like, the Hamilton grandstands. What else can I tell you guys about the venue? I will say it was expensive. So to put into context, I have gone to the Monaco Grand Prix. I've gone to the Circuit of the Americas, and I've also gone to Las Vegas. Compared to the three, you would think Monaco would be the most expensive in the sense of like food and all of that. No, it was Las Vegas. In Monaco, you would get like two sandwiches, a bag of chips, two cherry cokes, a water, and an ice cream, and you would spend about like 35 to 40 dollars. For Vegas, it was if you got popcorn and chicken tenders with fries. Mind you, it was two tenders for like $16. And it was like a little plate. Like it was so small. And then the popcorn bag was decent, but still, like I think popcorn and the dessert were the cheapest things. The fact that it's a night race, it's cold, and you're not offering any warm drinks, whether it be hot cocoa, whether it be like a tea, or even like an apple cider, like nothing. That really sucked. And that was pretty much it. Just trying to be very brief about Las Vegas. Now let's get into Qatar. Also, buy his merch. This is so cute. This is not sponsored at all, but first of all, this quality is very, very nice. It's like breathable, but it also keeps you warm. I think this is probably one of my favorite merch drops besides like his home race one that he did at the beginning of this year. So go buy Oscar's merch. Because we need to buy him out of his McLaren contract. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's get into Qatar. My boy Oscar was on it from the very beginning. He was, and we knew, like, I don't know why people were surprised, but something interesting, obviously the double DSQ in Vegas was because of the plank, and apparently it was either Mexico or Brazil where they were very much on the line of like almost getting disqualified as well. They barely like passed. And I find it interesting because McLaren didn't want to risk that, obviously, in Qatar. So, and I know that it's a different, I think it's like a higher downforce and lower downforce. I don't know. But there was like this. My point is, I'm like, where am I going with this? My point is that there was this rumor, or not even a rumor. It was Andrea Stella who said that Oscar struggles in, the low grip tracks. And then I go back and I'm like, isn't Jeddah a low grip track? Isn't Qatar a low grip track? Like, and I know that the circuits are different. I get it, but I don't think that's the case. And even Oscar himself said in Mexico that he had to figure out how to drive the car differently. And apparently, Lando didn't have to. We get to Qatar and it's like the flip switched for Oscar. And it was Lando, not he was struggling, but he was clearly behind Oscar. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm really not. But there was just some things that I'm like, I understand higher downforce, lower downforce. Like I get some circuits are different. So the sprint, wonderful. My man led from the beginning, beautiful pole position, broke first of all the lap record. And then he did it again. He did it again in qualifying. And this is where my anger and my frustration, and I think a lot of us who are Oscar fans, where our anger and frustration lies. It's we get to the race and lap 7, safety car. Everyone pits except for us. And they come out and say, of course, that they made a mistake, but that the reason that they didn't pit was because that they knew that Lando was going to lose out. The reason that they didn't double stack was because they knew he was going to lose out. I'm sorry, haven't they been telling us this entire season that the person who's going to get priority is the person who's ahead of the teammate? Now, what could have happened was they could have pit both Oscar and Lando. Yes, Lando might have lost a position here or there, but we have I'm not even going to say McLaren has the quicker car this 2025 season. We saw overtakes happen, not like they couldn't happen. It was a little bit harder, yes, but his goal was just to remain in the top 6, I think, which he could have easily done so. That's one. With them pitting Oscar and Lando, Oscar could have maintained P1. And on top of that, obviously, either, Max is going to come second. But if Max had come in second or third, I think, now don't take my word for it, but I think he would have been out of contention to win. And we could have gone down to Abu Dhabi, it being between the two McLarens. But it would have been a really interesting position to be in for McLaren. It would have played out a whole lot different. But no, McLaren worried more about how the other would feel versus we need to make sure that our team wins. And Oscar's crash out was so valid. And if you haven't seen the video circling around Twitter, there's a Twitter user who was there and recorded him throwing his gloves, and he was, he came on the radio and said he was speechless. And I mean, I think a lot of us were speechless. And I said, I have a group chat with some lovely F1 content creators, and I was like, he needs an angry interpreter, from the Key and Peele skit. But on the bright side, also, Mr. Smooth Operator got his second podium of the season, which was fantastic to see. Very happy for him. But also Max being Max, 104-point deficit to then just losing out the championship by 2 points. And he himself, everyone's like, oh, well, we had congrats to George Russell in Barcelona. Have we forgot about Kimi Antonelli taking him out in Austria? That's also points lost, where else did he lose out on points? He lost points out in Miami. There was other places in the season where he lost out points. It wasn't just Barcelona. I think Barcelona was just more for the reaction of it all. But so Qatar was Qatar. I mean, and we could have had the grandest of slams for Oscar, but McLaren being McLaren, and then we get to Abu Dhabi, which I honestly think that F1 needs to reconsider it being the season finale. Now, maybe with the 2026 regs, it'll be a little bit different. So we shall see. But at least with 2025, we did have a few moments Lando did, overtake 4 cars. Oscar's beautiful overtake on Lando on hard tires in a heavy ass car. I'm sorry. That was the sexiest over. Now, mind you, I say every Oscar overtake is sexy, but that's sexy. That was a sexy overtake. And that's why he won overtake of the month. So, but it was just, I want to understand what McLaren's strategy for Oscar was. I think by this point, I fully accepted that McLaren was just going to back Lando. There was no way, that Lando was going to lose this championship unless something crazy happened. But the fact that they left Oscar out for so long, I was following, so I was watching his onboards. I didn't want to hear the commentary because I just knew the glazing of Lando Norris. And I'm sorry, Lando Norris fans, I'm not a fan of his. He deserves to win. I honestly hate the saying he deserves to win, because everyone, Oscar deserves to win, Max deserved to win, And everyone's talking about how like this championship is really, no one is like, oh my gosh, like great. Like it kind of fell flat a little bit. And I think, like I said, had we gone down to it being between either Oscar v. Lando or Oscar v. Max or even Lando v. Max, it would have been a lot more interesting had it been a lot closer. Like whether each one of them were 2 points off of each other, that would have been crazy. Like going into Abu Dhabi, but it wasn't the case. It was kind of sealed already that Lando was going to win this championship. Even the F1 app had already put that he had won one going into Abu Dhabi, and people pointed it out. So just fell flat, and that's why people don't like it. I think that the way that Lando drove the second half of the season, yeah, he did what he needed to do. Oscar struggled the second half of the season, and we saw him pick himself back up a little too late, and that's lessons that he's going to learn for the future. However, I wish McLaren would have just come out and said in Vegas, you know what? We know that Oscar's just a few points behind, and they've always said that they're not going to pick a number one and a number two unless one of them is mathematically out. But they could have clinched the title in Qatar for the drivers, but they didn't. It went down to Abu Dhabi, but even Abu Dhabi was boring. I wish McLaren would have just said, "Hey, like we love Oscar and we're so proud of what he's done this season, and it's fantastic to see his growth, but mathematically he's not first, so we're going to back our driver who's in first." Then I would say respected McLaren a little bit more, but I don't respect the fact that they were like, oh no, we're not going to issue team orders, and then next thing you know they're saying they are going to issue team orders, and it was just like, what is going on in the House of Commons? Like, are you guys not talking amongst yourselves? Like, is your communications department not communicating? Like, why are we doing this? And then of course, it was Max who won the race, Oscar in second, Lando in third. For me, driver of the day for Abu Dhabi was Charles Leclerc, because that man was going for it, and he was really trying to be there for his BFF, Max. Now I think this is something that is like torn between McLaren fans. I know Oscar fans, we were not happy about, at least I'll speak for myself, I was not happy about the radio message from Zach Brown and even Nico Rosberg. He did say that the radio message that Zach Brown gave to Oscar was very not insensitive, but it lacked empathy. And I agree. And some people, like my brother, Bubba, he was like, no, I think what he did was right. I think, he congratulated him because Tom was telling Oscar, hey, Lando's champion, not even telling him great job about his race. And I listened to his onboard. I didn't listen to the commentary or commentary. Do you guys say commentary? Oh, okay. I'm not gonna get into that. But Tom was like, hey, well done. What a weekend. And then it was like, Oscar, what a team player. And it was just like, what? And then, great job. 7 podiums, 7 wins, 16 podiums, or something like that. And then, Tom comes back on the radio and he's like, hey, like, we're really proud. This is a great season, but you learn. And then again, Zach comes on the radio and he's just like, what a great guy. Good job, Oscar. And it was kind of like, what? What is happening here? Like when and I'm sitting there, I'm listening, and Nico Rosberg said this is like one of the worst days of his life because he just lost a world championship. And then you also have to think about leading for 15 races, right? And almost everything being thrown at him. At one point, it was a 2 point gap between the two of them. And then it was like Zandvoort happened with Lando's DNF, and it was kind of the highs and the lows of his season. And the fact that it was not like, hey, Oscar, like, congratulations on P2. You fought valiantly. You raced well this season. And we know that you're going to come back stronger next season. Thank you for helping us clinch the constructor. Like, it wasn't anything uplifting. And last year, and I know that it was Lando who said it, he was like, next year is going to be the Lando Norris era, which it wasn't. But there was just no empathy from Zach. And there was no like, hey, like we know, acknowledging, at least saying like, hey, we know this hurts and I know this isn't what you wanted, but thank you and we're here for you. No. And then of course they come out and Park Ferme, and it was good to see. It was very heartwarming to see, Lando cry, hug his mom. I will say this, like, I'm not going to say he deserved the championship, but what he did, he did what he needed to do, and he learned his lessons from last year and he applied them. And that's what Oscar needs to do. And I think people forget this, and this serves as a reminder that I believe that Max Verstappen has, I want to say, 10 seasons or 10 plus seasons in Formula One. I know that Lando has 7 plus seasons in Formula One. Oscar has just finished his 3rd season. And if he's in his 3rd season, and I know like a car plays a part into it, but it's also the driver, because last year Oscar was nowhere in qualifying, and he came on F1 TV last year, and Will Buxton asked him like, hey, what are you going to work on in the winter break? And he said, I got to work on my qualifying, because there were some races where I was locked in and I was doing good, and there were other races where I was not. And he's like, I just need to work on that consistency and qualifying. And we saw that from the very beginning in Australia, how close him and Lando were. He's in his 3rd season, and if he's putting these fights against, Lando and the likes of Max Verstappen, a 4-time world champion, oh my goodness. I hope that McLaren can give him a competitive car in 2026, because if that's the case, watch out. This whole time there was no number one, but it was clear that there was a number one. And now, everybody kind of called them out on their PR, on their media. And then all of a sudden Lando wins and he's like, don't forget about Oscar. I don't want you to forget about Oscar. He did a Sky Sports interview and they asked him like, hey, have you talked to Oscar? And he was like, I don't know how to approach. Like, I want to give him a hug. And I'm like, bro, just answer the question. Have you talked to him or not? It's just a simple yes or no. Like, what's all this like word vomit? And also, Andrea Stella saying like, "Oh, we know that Oscar's capable of winning the world." It was just like all of a sudden this Oscar glazing from everyone, and it just did not feel, until this day, does not feel genuine at all. It was like, okay, our guy finally won, the guy who's been with McLaren for X amount of years, and he finally did it. But it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. Like, and I was one of those people is like, if it can't be Australian, let it be Dutch. And if you have an issue with that, I really don't care. McLaren should be embarrassed that they didn't finish 1-2 in the world drivers. And that's on McLaren, because they could have had Qatar gone the way that it should have, which would have been an Oscar win. So the prize ceremony was yesterday. So that kind of closes out. For me, that's what kind of closes out the 2025 season. Now we're about to head into 2026. Of course, regs change. And let me see, because my phone, I have that Box app where it tells you like how many days. So we are 82 days away from the Australian Grand Prix. There's so many rumors going around, about who's going to have the better car. Is it going to be Aston Martin with the Honda engine and Newey? The fact that Alpine, Williams, they were one of the few like constructors who weren't bringing in updates. I haven't heard any rumors about Alpine, but I have heard rumors about Williams saying that they are in advance, so that they are ahead of the mark. Same thing with Audi. I haven't really heard much about Cadillac. Also, that's exciting. We're getting Cadillac into the grid next year. Sauber becoming Audi. The fact that Arvid Lindblad is now going to be racing for Visa Cash App Racing Bulls alongside Liam Lawson, meaning that Isak Hajar did get the promotion to the second Red Bull seat, meaning that Yuki was kicked out. Helmut Marko is leaving Red Bull. Who is going to take that position over? We heard earlier in the season that there were talks between it being Sebastian Vettel or potentially even moving GP into that role. This is gonna be, I don't know if it's a hot take or I don't know, but here we go. I would love to see either Will Joseph completely focus on being the director of race engineering or focus directly and strictly on being Lando's race engineer. I don't think it's fair that the director has any sort of input on another, like be the race engineer for another driver, because optically, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but I'm saying optically it just doesn't look right. And as far as Tom Stallard, I think that Oscar Piastri needs to find himself another race engineer. And some people are gonna be like, well, hey, they work well together. Here's my thing. Will Joseph bats for Lando Norris. Will Joseph, the way that it comes across, again, this is all optically, so I don't know anything internally. I'm not part of the team, but optically, it just looks like Will Joseph is always going to try to get Lando to come on top. His goal, of course, is to get as many points from McLaren, but he always wants his driver to win. Now you go to the other side of the garage and you talk to Tom Stallard, and it just feels like Tom's focus is McLaren oriented. It's not driver oriented. He doesn't go to bat. It just doesn't seem like he goes to bat for Oscar. Crystal, can you give some examples? Singapore. He could have said, like, he could have fought with the pit wall and said, hey, no, let's give Oscar the position back. Like, papaya rules state that you shouldn't hit your teammate. Boom. There's that resolve. There's in Hungary, Oscar was in P1, Lando was in P2. Lando goes on a different strategy that wins him the race, and Tom's like, hey, so what do you want to focus on, Leclerc or Lando? And Oscar's like, how do I beat Lando? You go to Abu Dhabi, he asks, like, hey, how do I win this race? Crickets from his pit wall. I don't feel like Tom Stallard bats for Oscar the way that he should, the way that Will Joseph does for Lando. And that's what Oscar needs. Oscar needs someone who's going to bat for him. Of course, you're going to protect McLaren and make sure that they win the constructors again. But at the end of the day, you always want your driver to win. And that doesn't feel like that happens with Tom Stallard. I don't know, you guys. I'm yapping at this point. But that's pretty much it, you guys. I don't know how, linear this episode was. I'm sorry if it was chaotic at some points. I'm sorry if I rambled. But please make sure to like, subscribe. But I will see you guys next week so we can talk about champions, we can talk about Prem, we can talk about La Liga, and we can talk about how extremely expensive these World Cup tickets are. Anyways, I love you guys. See you guys. Peace.